Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining this month's Coffee Chats. I'm excited to introduce our speaker today, Madelyn, also known as Maddie. Maddie brings over a decade of recruiting experience at top companies like Microsoft, Meta, and LinkedIn. In 2022, she left the corporate world to launch Career Finesse, a reverse recruiting service that empowers professionals in their job search. Maddie is also the founder of SkillScript, an AI based tool designed to transform the job market by helping professionals showcase their strengths and helping companies uncover overlooked talent. Her mission is to bring clarity, transparency, and humanity to hiring, and she's known for delivering straightforward, no fluff career advice that truly works. Please, everyone, join me today in welcoming Maddie.
Good morning, everybody, or good afternoon, depending on where you're at. My name is Madeline. I go by Maddie, and I was a recruiter for a really long time, for almost a decade. I worked at some of the big guys, Microsoft, Meta, LinkedIn, and a few years ago, I decided, after hiring thousands of people for companies, I felt like my mission was really truly to help people find jobs. I felt like the companies had enough help. People don't have individual help, and there were just so many things that I felt as a recruiter were extremely obvious when it came to hiring, but no one knew. It was like the secret, and no one knew what was going on behind the scenes. So I started sharing on social media about these secrets and then also helping people with these secrets that weren't really secrets. They were just people didn't want you to know. Recruiters didn't want you to know, hiring managers didn't want you to know that it was a game that we've all been playing and we didn't ever realize it. So I want to uncover some of those secrets, uncover some of those hacks today. Because right now, especially in the job market right now, it feels impossible to find a job. I mean, everybody that I talk to, every client, every person on social media who reaches out to me, on LinkedIn, it's the same story. I've been applying to hundreds of jobs. I've done all the things on the resume. I still can't find a job. So we're gonna go through some of the things that I feel like you should know when it comes to hiring, and then also how to combat like this really to fight for yourself in this impossible job market that genuinely feels like you're going to war. So first we're gonna go through what recruiters are actually looking for. I think a lot of people understand like what an ATS is kind of at a high level. They're like, okay, I apply, that's the ATS. Then there's like AI and robots that go in there and reject me immediately. And that's actually not what happens. ATSs are not quite that sophisticated. I think they will be, probably in a year or so, maybe in 2 years. But the money that companies are spending is not in hiring. It's not in ATSs. It's not to make the recruiter's job easier. I think I had to like fight for Zoom at one point at my company. So like they're not trying to give recruiters any budget at all. If anything, they're trying to eliminate recruiting and HR overall. So they're not going out and like buying these really sophisticated ATS systems. Not quite. And that is why a lot of recruiters, I don't know if y'all follow any recruiters on LinkedIn or connected with any of them, they're always complaining that they have like thousands of people who are applying to jobs and they don't know what to do with that because again, ATSs just haven't quite caught up. So people think that ATSs are this very complicated, sophisticated system. They're not. They're pretty much just like a really fancy Google Sheet. And in the same way that you filter things on Google Sheet, the way that I like to explain it is ATS is like Amazon Prime. Okay, you go on Amazon app, you want to shop for something. You're going to filter for, you're gonna put a search in, then you're gonna filter. I only want things that are gonna come to me in 2 day shipping, right? So if I am on Amazon and I'm sh looking for black shoes, size 7.5, and I want it to come in 2 days, I don't want to see anything that is not covered under Prime. And I also don't want to see anything that are not black shoes, right? It's going to be really frustrating for you. That's the only thing I'm looking for. Don't show me white shoes. Don't show me orange shoes. Don't show me men's size 10 shoes. These are the only shoes I'm looking for. And that is exactly how the ATS works. That's how the ATS works, and that's also how all the job boards work. Is we're searching for this thing, we're filtering, right? We're filtering for things like keywords, we're filtering for things like titles, and those are the things that are going to be the most important when you're creating your resume. A lot of people like to get creative because I think a lot of people think that if my resume stands out, that I have a better chance, but it's actually the opposite. If your resume is different than everybody else's, in the sense that you have a different title, you have different keywords, you have better keywords, right? You have more SAT words in your resume. Those aren't things that recruiters are looking for. They're literally looking at the job description. And when you're looking at a job description, those they're telling you what they're looking for right there under what the requirements are, what we're looking for, whatever it is. That's it. Those are the key words. They're, all the other fancy words that are at the top of the res or at the top of the job description does not matter. The hiring manager has told the recruiter, hey, we're looking for someone who has 5 years of experience. They need a bachelor's and they need to have these three tools. They need to have Smartsheets experience, Airtable, and Jira. Those are the three things that we want. So if I know that that's what my hiring manager is looking for, the first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to go into my little system and I'm going to see all the people who've applied and I'm going to filter for people with a bachelor's degree. Then the next thing I'm gonna do is I'm gonna filter for people who have at least 5 years of experience. And then the next thing I'm gonna do is I'm going to filter for people who have a bachelor's degree, 5 years of experience, this title, program manager, and then these three tools, Smartsheets, Jira, and Airtable. Anybody who does not have those keywords in their resume, anybody who doesn't have those words, they're just going to be filtered out. So it's not that there is this special system that is kicking you out of the system and like rejecting you immediately. It is the same way, like when you're shopping on Amazon, right? You are filtering. That is what recruiters are doing. So your goal is to fall under those filters. And what are under those filters are right there on the job description. The recruiter and the hiring manager are telling you exactly what we're looking for. And if you don't meet those qualifications, then you're going to be filtered out. And so one of the questions, and I'm going to answer that here, that was sent over is how to beat the ATS. And I get this question a lot because, again, people think that there is this like really complicated robot. If you need to strategize to beat the ATS, which you can't beat the ATS, right? It's not something to beat. But if you need to strategize to beat the ATS, it just means that you're not qualified. And that's okay. Okay. It's okay to not be qualified for this job. Spend your time applying for jobs that you don't have to beat the ATS for. Spend your time applying for jobs that you're qualified for. And once you get more of the experience that you need for your next position, which is a job that you would have had to strategize to beat the ATS for before, you'll be qualified for it. Or spend more time looking and like researching the job description and figuring out what those keywords are. And the great thing about job descriptions is that recruiters and hiring managers don't get that creative, right? They don't get creative with their res or their job descriptions. You shouldn't get creative with your resumes because at the end of the day, they're looking kind of for the same thing. You'll look for a job description and it'll say very, very similar things under what you're going to be doing day to day and what they're looking for. And so the good thing is once you've seen three or four or five or six of these job descriptions, you can probably predict what is going to be on the next one. And those keywords that are in job description one, job description two, job description three, and that are pretty consistent across the job descriptions are absolutely the kind of keywords that should be in your resume. But the thing is, a lot of people talk about these keywords in your resume, but it's not just about having keywords in your resume. It is also about having those keywords the most. So it's just like, I don't know if people are familiar with like how Google search works, but when you Google something, you're like, I'm looking for the best brunch in Tampa. That's where I live. If I were to Google best brunch in Tampa, it's not going to actually show me the best brunch in Tampa or the place that has the highest reviews or the place that people love the most and people are raving about on Yelp. What it's showing me is the website that says best brunch in Tampa the most. That's who comes up on your Google search. There's a whole team of people for each company who determine what kind of words go on a website so that they can get higher in SEO, which is search engine optimization. And so what you want is keyword optimization. You want to optimize for keywords and not just including those keywords, not just including those titles, not including those tools, but showing them throughout your resume. And I always like to say when I was a recruiter and I would search for a candidate on LinkedIn, because most of my time was actually sourcing and finding these candidates. Whoever had keywords will pull up in my search. Whoever had keywords the most will pull up higher. And so if I click on their profile, it actually highlights those keywords for me. And so anybody who had those keywords and I was looking at them, I would always say, like, it looks like a Christmas tree. It highlights like a Christmas tree. It lights up like a Christmas tree. If I am looking for someone and I know that this person's like a really good fit, it's because they have a lot of highlights on their resume. That's how I would determine if someone was a good fit or not. And that's how most recruiters are, right? We're not a program manager. We're not an engineer. We're not a website developer or web developer. Like what we are recruiters, and we are just doing what our hiring managers say. We don't actually know what these people are doing day to day, but we know what hiring managers are looking for. So that's all we look for is what hiring managers tell us to. So we can't really look at a resume and be like, oh yeah, this person's a really good program manager, because at the end of the day, we don't know what program managers are doing day in, day out. But we know what hiring managers tell us, what they need, and that's all that we look for. And so whoever has those keywords, whoever has those the most, in our head, that person must know what they're talking about. Like if I'm looking at a resume and someone has Jira in their most recent job, but then Jira doesn't show up in anywhere else in their resume, I'm going to assume they didn't use Jira, right? The only time they've used Jira is the past 2 years. But if someone has Jira in their most recent job, in their second job, and their third job, I'm going to say, wow, this person is really familiar with Jira. So this person is probably better qualified than the person who has Jira in their resume one time. Okay. So it's not just about having the keywords, but it's also about having the keywords the most. The second thing that people don't like to don't like to share, especially companies and recruiters, is that company pedigree doesn't matter. And also having being hired and being employed most recently also matters. So if you go into the job market and you have a gap and you haven't been employed for 2 to 3 years, like for me, for example, I have not had a corporate job in about 3 years. And if I went to apply to a job, I couldn't just put that I've been unemployed for 3 years, right? I would, because they would immediately think like, oh, she doesn't know anything about recruiting anymore. She hasn't been employed in 3 years. I would have to put some freelance projects, some projects, something to showcase that I actually know what I'm talking about and that I didn't forget, right? Because even though it's only been 3 years, or in some people's cases, 6 months, they are going to think the person who has the most recent experience is going to have the most relevant experience. And that person is more hireable than the person who may have had 10 years of experience but has been unemployed for 6 months. So I always tell people, do not just leave that blank. Don't just make it seem as if you haven't been working. Put projects, put freelance, even if it's stuff you didn't get paid for. They want to see that you've actually been doing something. Another thing is title progression. So a lot of people will put their title in their most recent position, of course, and then maybe a similar title in the second position, something similar in the third position. But what a lot of people want to see, and like a lot of hiring managers want to see, is that you have progressed in your career. So if you started off as a coordinator, then you moved into a project manager one, now you're a senior project manager, they want to see that you progressed. And that means the titles and the experience that you've had in each position shouldn't be cookie cutter. It shouldn't be exactly the same because your work shouldn't have been exactly the same. You didn't start off in a program and project manager position doing the same exact work as a project coordinator, or start off in a project coordinator position doing the same exact work as a program manager. So it should reflect that. Because they want to see like, oh wow, this person can grow. And then a lot of people hear about the 6 second test, right? That is really how, again, I call it the Christmas tree test. How many lights are on the Christmas tree? That's who I'm gonna go for. So you want to make sure your resume tells a story pretty quickly for a recruiter, and think of them as just like scanning it, because that's all we're doing is we're scanning the resume. Whoever has those keywords, whoever has those highlights the most is is going to pass that scan test. All right, the next thing we're gonna go over is the resume mistakes that immediately disqualify you. And we talked a little bit about this, about like keywords and stuff and unexplained gaps. But other things that I want to talk about is, so because someone also asked, do we still need career summaries? Now, this is just my personal opinion. I like a career summary as a recruiter because it is very easy for me to know the things that are really important to me, what your title is, and how many years of experience you have. If your career summary, if I could have it my way, it would just say program manager, 5 years of experience. That's all that a career summary should have. But I think career summaries are important because they make it really easy and very clear for the recruiter who you are and how many years of experience you have. Because those are things that are really important to hiring managers. And those are things that are really important to move you forward in the process. So I don't think career summaries should ever say things like seeking a challenging position, or um, hard worker, or quick learner. Those are not things that I don't want to see like an objective. What I want to see is a summary. That's what I want to see. I want to see your title, your industry, and how many years of experience that you have. It doesn't have to be long. It could literally be 2 sentences. And also you can use this again for keyword optimization and adding those keywords. So I think it's more helpful. I always tell people, because one of the things that I get asked constantly, and I'm sure some of y'all have heard this before, is you can't have more than a one-page resume, right? And so I have had so many clients with like 10, 15, 20 years of experience saying, hey, it is really hard for me to put all my experience in one page. Of course it is, because you're not supposed to. And it's actually counterproductive to do so, because if you are going to pull up higher in people's searches because you have more keywords, that means that you also need to have more words. And if you have more words, that means your resume cannot be one page. So I am more likely to talk to a candidate who has a 3 page resume simply because they have all those keywords that I'm looking for and they're going to pull up higher than a 1 page resume, right? And the same way that we search on LinkedIn, No one's ever worried about how long your LinkedIn, and you've never heard anyone say that. And people, recruiters probably spend more time looking at LinkedIn's than they actually do looking at resumes. And if they don't mind looking at a long LinkedIn, right? No one's ever complained about that. They also are not going to mind looking at a long resume because at the end of the day, they're not really reading the resume. They're scanning it. They're not reading it like a novel, like, oh my God, I want to know everything about Danielle and like what she's been doing in her life because I'm really interested. They don't care. They want to see those keywords, make sure that you're a fit, and then send you over to the hiring manager. Unexplained gaps in employment history. Now, this is a tough one, and this one makes me really uncomfortable to talk about because, hello, everybody's getting laid off. So, of course, there's going to be gaps in the resume. But some of the things that I have shared with my clients and candidates overall is that just talk about them, right? In your resume, if you were laid off, just say that, right? You can just say that it was laid off, or if it was a contract, just say that, right? So, as opposed to it looks like you've had 10 jobs in the past 3 years. I said three jobs, but honestly, three jobs in the past 3 years is not that bad. 10 jobs in the past 3 years is probably, that's a red flag. But a lot of people have contract jobs. Say that. If you were laid off, say that, right? Just make it really crystal clear that it's not like, hey, I'm not just like jumping ship every chance that I got and get. I was just laid off. And so no one can say like, oh, this person is has too many jobs or they're jumpy or they're flight risk or they don't know what they're doing because they have this unexplained gap. You tell them like, oh yes, I've been laid off, and but these are the projects and freelance work that I've been doing since. Another thing is people will use a lot of like weak action verbs that have zero quantifiable results. So I think that not every bullet point on your resume should have a number, but I think everyone should tell every bullet point on your resume should tell a recruiter or hiring manager how good you are at your job. So it needs to either tell a number or an outcome, something that you've increased, decreased, something that you made better, something that you eliminated, a process improvement, those type of things belong on your resume. I don't want to see like really basic bullet points. And after this, I have some examples of like a good bullet point versus weak bullet point. But at the end of the day, everybody should be using AI for their resume, right? And ChatGPT, Claude, whatever, whichever one. But either way, I want to see something that how you are good at your job. I want it to be really crystal clear when I'm looking as a hiring manager or recruiter that you're good at your job. And think of it as like you are a hiring manager, but instead of thinking of yourself as a hiring manager, think of yourself as a consumer. And when you're looking to hire somebody for a job, right? A plumber, an electrician, someone that needs to be really good at their job because they could really mess things up around here if you get somebody you hire somebody who's not that great of an electrician. So if you are going to do that, you want that person to be really good. When you go and you're looking at their website and you're looking at the reviews, you want it to be really clear that they know what they're doing, right? You're not going to just like take a chance on somebody who may be good, but you don't really know. Hiring managers are the same way. And because unfortunately, well, fortunately, I think we don't have reviews for how good we are put on our resume, it's hard for hiring managers to know what you've been doing and how good you are. So you have to tell them. There's no one else is going to tell them for you. You have to tell them on your resume. All right. Other hidden biases in the hiring system. School bias, I think that one's obvious, right? If you have an Ivy League school, is better than a state school, which is better than a community college, which is better than no degree. But having more experience is more important than all those things. All right. They would have rather have somebody who has 10 years of experience. And I think a lot of people, especially new grads, are understanding this now, than someone who has an Ivy League degree and no experience, right? Having more experience is more important than having a better school because they need you to have hands-on experience. They in their head, they're like, who is going to be the person who I'm going to have to train the least? Now, there's always going to be a learning curve when someone starts, but they don't want to have to spend so much time training somebody. So whoever is going to come and hit the ground running, that's the person that they're most likely to go with. Name bias, again, something that's uncomfortable to talk about, but it's true. Sometimes I'll have a client who has a really ethnic name, or even candidates who I've talked to, even in my time as a recruiter, I've had really uncomfortable experiences because the hiring manager is like, I don't want to talk to that person. I can't even pronounce their name. So if you do have like an ethnic last name or first, use an initial, okay? Make it easy for everybody, just use an initial. It doesn't matter, right? I've had people be put B Johnson and her name was something really ethnic, right? Put an initial instead of your full name if you feel like there's going to be a bias there. Age bias. If there is somebody who has too much experience, if there's somebody who has a lot of experience, they're immediately going to think this person is out of our budget. That is the first thing that they're going to think. The second thing they're going to think is that this person is desperate because they're not finding a job at their level. And so they're going to take this job. And as soon as they find a better job, which is going to be true for every person, but as soon as they find a better job, they're going to be out of here and it's going to be a waste of 6 months for us, which is true in a lot of situations. So if it's somebody who has a lot of experience, they are going to immediately disqualify that person. So one of the things that I always tell people is limit your experience. If you are applying for a job that is only requiring 5 years experience, don't put your 15 years of experience resume. Use a simpler resume. You actually don't have to put every single job you've ever had on your resume. My rule is only put the experience that is relevant. And so if it's only looking for 5 years of experience, 15 years, 10 years of that experience is not relevant, right? So you would want to take off any of the experience that makes you look overqualified. And then location bias. Remote jobs still prefer local candidates. You'll see it on job descriptions all the time. So if you are looking for a remote job, start in your city, your town, your area. Even if it's remote, they want to be like, oh, you can come in person and meet and just meet the team. And they want someone who can like come in for important meetings. So if you are looking for positions and you're looking for remote, start in your area first and then go out. There's nothing that we can do to really do anything about these biases. They exist, they will always exist, but there are things that you can do to combat them, right? And it has to do with keywords, of course, and strategizing on your resume, storytelling, and then, of course, creating a strong network of people who can advocate for you. Next, we are going to go through interview secrets. Now, I don't love talking about resumes. It is actually my least favorite thing to do, but I understand that it is really important because it is the only way you get to the interview. I hear so many people talk about resumes, not enough people talk about interviews. And to me, resumes get you the interview, but the interview is what gets you the job. And more people spend time optimizing their resume, optimizing their LinkedIn, networking, and all those things are important. But then they get to the interview and they totally bomb because they spent so much time optimizing their resume and networking. They were just trying to get to the interview, and then they get an interview 2 days later and they're not prepared. I saw it myself as a recruiter, so many candidates who were perfect on paper. And I talked to them and I was like, oh, this person's for sure gonna get the job. Then they get to the interview and the hiring manager would be like, that was the most wasted time I've ever had. Please don't ever do that again. And I'd be like, I am so sorry. He was great or she was great when I talked to them on the phone. Their resume looked great. I would not have been able to, I would not have been able to predict they would have bombed so bad. And it's just because one, interviews are theater. They are pretend, they are make believe, they are cosplay. And you have to cosplay as the perfect employee, not the perfect candidate, but the perfect employee. And it's hard to do that, right? It's hard to cosplay as this person. You want to talk just like a normal person. Why can't I talk to you like a human? Why do I have to talk in this like interview voice and use these like words that I wouldn't talk in everyday life? And the truth is you actually can talk like a normal person. I always tell people when they go into interviews is to talk to them like they're already your coworker, right? There's a level of professionalism you have with your coworker, but not quite the level of professionalism that you have when you're in an interview. And I feel like that level of professionalism that you try to cosplay in an interview actually makes people, and this is going to sound kind of rude, but it actually makes you sound dumber, right? When you try to sound a lot smarter and like use words that you don't use every day, you're going to struggle. You're going to struggle to say these words. You're going to struggle to say them eloquently, and it makes you sound like you don't know what you're talking about. So as opposed to trying to answer these questions fancier than you would normally do, just talk like a regular human being. Talk like you're speaking to a coworker. Keep it professional, but keep it casual, keep it conversational. Those are the best interviews, as opposed to it feeling like question, answer, question, answer, question, answer, like an interrogation. It should be like, I'm asking you a question, then you're answering the question, and then why don't you ask me one back, right? Like if I'm asking, tell me about a time that you've had a really difficult customer. Here's my answer. I'm going to give you a specific example. And then you can ask back, like, oh, how often are employees here, how often are people in this position dealing with difficult customers? What are some of the difficult customers? What are some of the experiences that your employees have? Right. And now you're opening up the conversation to the interviewer, and they're gonna be like, oh, wow, this person's asking me a conversation. I'm not just like a robot here who's asking questions. Now we're having a conversation because when you're my employee, you're my team, whether it's a coworker or my employee, I'm gonna be having conversations with you. I'm not just going to ask you questions and expect you to answer and then not ask me any questions back. Questions are designed to eliminate, not include, right? The worst thing is when a hiring manager has had an interview with 10 candidates and they come back and they're like, I loved all of them. I loved every single one and I want to hire every single one. That's not possible. They can't, right? So the questions actually need to eliminate people. Your goal as an interviewer, as a hiring manager, is you're going to get into an interview. Yes, you want to hire somebody, you want to love them, but you can't love all of them, right? Like if you go to a puppy store, you can't love all of them. You do got to choose one. So they have to say, like, okay, this puppy was too sleepy. This puppy was too excited. This puppy peed all over the place. I don't want to bring this puppy home. I'm gonna just bring this perfect puppy who didn't pee all over me and was a level of excitement that I can deal with every day. And that is what hiring managers are like or interviewers are like in the interview process. They need to eliminate people who are not a good fit. Sometimes it's by comparison. They'll say, okay, I had these five candidates, they were great, all of them were great. I love this about this person, this about this person, this about the other person, but who's gonna be better, right? How are we going to determine that? And that means you need to ask better questions. So sometimes the questions feel like trick questions, like you're trying to trick me, but they're not. They really do want to hear what your problem solving skills are and how confident you are when you're answering these questions. If you don't feel confident when you're answering the questions, they can feel that. They feel like you're not confident when you're answering the questions. They feel like you're not confident when you're solving problems. And they don't want to hire somebody who's incompetent. So you need to be confident when you're answering questions. And one of the things that I always tell people that feels wrong is if you don't know the answer, don't fake it because they'll be able to tell. Now you're just lying. Now you're a liar. They don't want to hire a liar. So if you don't know the answer, ask clarifying questions. If you don't know how to answer that question, ask clarifying questions. If you don't have experience with that, tell them like, oh, I actually don't have experience. If they're like, tell me about your experience with Jira. I actually don't have experience with Jira. Here are the systems that I do have experience with. This is how many years of experience I have, and this is my proficiency level with each one. Don't lie and be like, I have 5 years of Jira experience. They're like, okay, create a workflow in Jira right now. And you're like, "Oof, I don't even know how to log in, right? That's not what you want. That's not the situation you want to be in. So as opposed to trying to fake it till you make it, which is what a lot of people are going to say, you want to be honest about your level of experience, exaggerate a little bit, right? Like make it sound a little bit better, maybe, but always be confident. Don't lie because it's hard to be confident when you're lying. And people would rather work with people who are likable and people who know what they're doing versus people who are extremely technically proficient. And I've had a lot of candidates who I have interviewed with in the past as a recruiter. They're like, man, this person has all the things that we're looking for, but he just seems really awful to work with. And it is because either he was not confident enough, or maybe like egotistical and like too confident, or it was just like too focused on work and not too focused on interpersonal relationships, right? Like it was not very conversational. I'd ask him a question, he'd just answer it, and then that'd be it. He didn't ask me any questions at the end. And that's not a person I want to work with. That person seems kind of boring. I don't want to work with that person. Um, and one of the things that I'll never forget is when I was at Microsoft and I was a recruiter, and one of the hiring managers was like, ah, you know what's really important for me when I'm interviewing? Would I grab a beer with this person? And I thought, what a freaking weird requirement because I don't drink beer. Okay, first of all. Second of all, I'm not drinking beer with my coworkers and definitely not drinking beer with my boss. So it was such a weird thing for me to hear. And it didn't make sense for me, especially like as a woman and a woman color working with a bunch of men who were not women and not people of color. So I didn't really understand what that meant until later when I understood. It's not that they actually want to grab a beer with this person, right? They want someone who is likable. And the same way that you want to deal with people who are likable, if you could choose your coworkers, they would all be likable, right? You want them to be smart, you want them to be good at their job, but you also want them to be likable. And right now, hiring managers and companies have a lot more people that they can choose from who are good at their job and who have the experience. So the way that you're going to stand out isn't by having a better resume, it's not by having these creative keywords. It is simply by going into the interview and being likable. And the best way to be likable, in my very humble opinion, is to be conversational. And when you are treating like an interview as opposed to like an interrogation and actually treating it like a conversation, it is a lot easier to showcase how likable you are. And I never say showcase your personality because personality hires are a myth, but you do want to showcase how likable you are. All right, and the last thing that we're gonna go over is for the five secrets is why spray and pray doesn't work. So a lot of people I talk to, they're like, oh, I am applying to every position. Every time I see a position, I apply to it, even if I don't qualify. Because they're like, if I apply to more positions, then that's more recruiters who have eyes on my resume, right? But we've already learned from the ATS that that's actually not true, right? Because if you're applying to positions that you don't qualify for, you're being filtered out. So actually, recruiters aren't seeing your resume, and now you're wasting your own time. And I don't know about you, time is very precious to me. So spraying and praying doesn't work. You want to be intentional. So what I always, when I'm starting a job search with a client, I do a very in-depth job search strategy. I send them, these are the titles that you're looking for. These are the keywords that are in those job descriptions. Look at for positions that are from these type of companies. They should have this many years of experience, nothing more than this, nothing less than this. These are the salaries. I'm very crystal clear. These are the websites that you should go to and job boards that you should go to find those jobs. And when we are looking at this job search strategy, we're being very specific. We're not applying to positions that we don't qualify for because again, a lot of us just don't have that time to waste. So when we are applying to quality jobs, you still need to have a higher quantity, right? It does still take about 100, 150 jobs, applications to get an offer. If you're applying to 10 really good jobs that you're qualified for every week, that's going to take about 10 to 12 weeks, right? To get an offer, which is about standard if you're doing it correctly. And if it's a normal job market. Once you apply to these jobs, another thing is, and some companies actually limit how many jobs that you can apply to at the company because a lot of people will just apply to jobs that you don't qualify for. I can see in the system if you've applied to every job from accountant to CEO at the company, right? So if I look at the ATS and I see that you apply to all these jobs, I'm immediately going to think that this person doesn't know what they're looking for. I'm not necessarily thinking that they're desperate, but I'm thinking this person doesn't know what they're looking for. And I don't want to be the person to help them figure it out. That's not my job. I'm a recruiter. My job is to fill this position. And so if I see that you're applying to every single job, I'm immediately going to think like, oh, this person doesn't know what they're looking for. I know exactly what I'm looking for. So we're not going to be aligned. If you are applying and you're um, using targeted applications and you're also tailoring your resume. Tailoring your resume does not mean redoing it for every application. It just means that you are cognizant of the keywords that they're looking for, making sure those are in your resume. Once you are doing that and you're doing that for 10 applications a week, my strategy, and this is a strategy that I've been using all of 2025 with my clients, and every client who's used it has gotten interviews from the strategy, okay? You find one company that from that 10 the tech stack of 10 applications that you did that week, and you find five people, 3 to 5 people who work at that company. Not just 3 to 5 people who work at the company, but 3 to 5 people who work at the company who would be either on the hiring team, the hiring manager, maybe someone who the hiring manager reports to. You're going to find them on LinkedIn. You're going to send them a connection request. In the connection request, you're going to send a personal note. In order to do this, you do need LinkedIn Premium because LinkedIn only allows you to do 5 personal notes a month. In that connection request, you're going to tell them, hey, I've already applied to this position, right? See you're hiring for this position. I've already applied. And after I'll also, Danielle, send you the templates that I recommend using. It's very simple because you only get 200 characters that you can use in a LinkedIn personal note. You're going to say, hey, I've already applied to this position. See you're hiring. I've already applied. I just want to make sure someone sees my profile because it's true. That's exactly what you're doing, right? If there's 1,000 people who are applying to jobs, you're not going to stand out in the ATS. But how many of those 1,000 people do you think are going to spend an hour finding the hiring manager, people who are on the team, and then sending them connection requests? And then once they accept that connection request, you're sending them a longer message. Thanks so much for accepting my connection request. No need to respond. So now you're taking the pressure off because a lot of people are gonna be like, ugh, if you're interested in the job, just apply to the job. All right, that's the first thing they're gonna tell you. Hey, if you're a good fit, apply, and the recruiter is gonna reach out to you. You've already applied. So the first rejection that you're gonna get, they can't even say because you've already applied. The second pushback that you're gonna get is, ugh, this person's gonna want me to hop on a call, do a coffee chat, do something. I don't want to do that. I'm working. I'm busy. I'm understaffed because I'm hiring. I don't have time for that. So a lot of people are like, can we get on a coffee chat? No, I'm working, right? And if you were working, you wouldn't appreciate someone asking you that either. So what you're gonna say is no pressure to respond. Now you're taking the pressure off. They're like, okay, this person literally just wants me to see their profile. I mean, I can do that, right? You tell them in this email your 3 corporate superpowers. These are things that you're just really good at, things that you're good at and you're consistently good at, and you can prove that you're good at in every position that you've been in. Those are your corporate superpowers. And ideally, there are things that are important for this role. So if it's a program manager or project manager role, right, you're going to focus on timelines, budgets, schedules, working with engineers, working with deliverables, those type, working with clients. Those are the things that are going to be important. You're going to showcase your corporate superpowers. Then you are going to say, hey, just again, no pressure to respond. I just want to make sure someone will saw my profile, and that's it. You're going to leave it. You're going to do that at 5 people. Out of those 5, maybe one is going to respond, right? Not the best ROI, right? But it's better than applying to 150 positions, getting 0 responses. You reach out to 5 people per one company every week. You research one company, you do this 5, I call it like a blitz. You're doing a marketing blitz to these people. You're pitching yourself, you're selling yourself, right? Because at the end of the day, that is what you're doing. You do want to create connections and you want to add people to your network, but they need to come to something, right? And they're going to know, like, oh, this person doesn't really just want to know what's going on at work with me. They don't care, right? So as opposed to you being fake, let them know, like, hey, I've applied. I want to make sure someone sees my profile. And as opposed to being pushy about it, like, I don't know if you've ever been sold a hair straightener in the middle of the mall, as opposed to being pushy about it, like that type of sales, you want someone who is like, hey, I'm really good at my job and I want to prove it to y'all. One of the things I also recommend is creating a deck. Now, this one takes a little bit more time. Not everybody wants to do it. With all the AI tools out there, honestly, Canva AI can do it for you really quickly. And I tell them to tailor a presentation just like this, right? It's like 5 slides of all your corporate superpowers, all your big wins, all your highlighted accomplishments, things that are going to be really important to the company. Tailor it to the company. So you've done research on the company, what their numbers look like, what they're struggling with, what this team is struggling with. Like I go in and I'll look at like the hiring manager's post and repost on LinkedIn because it tells me a lot, right? I'll go in and I'll see all the news of what's happening at this company. It tells me a lot, especially what happens, if it's a marketing team, like what is relevant to the marketing team. And then I tell them why I am the person who's going to solve that problem, whatever that problem is, right? If they're really struggling connecting to Gen Z and they're like, we really want some more Gen Z consumers. Guess what my presentation is going to be about? Yeah, you bet your bottom dollar. It's going to be on Gen Z and how I really can connect with Gen Z. And here's a proof of how I've done that. Um, and that is how you're going to network. A lot of people think that like referrals are the answer, and it's not that referrals are the answer because that means you can go to somebody in accounting for a program manager position and then that's going to increase your chances of getting a job. Absolutely not. Referrals that help is because it is somebody who can hand the resume to a hiring manager and the hiring manager would care. Like if you're an accountant, I'm an engineer, you don't know anything about engineering. So why would I care that you're sending me a resume? How do you know if this person is good? But if you're on the team, there's no way you're going to send me a resume of someone who's not going to be good at the job because they're going to be your coworker. And if they're not good at the job, guess who's going to do it? You are. So if you're going to send over someone for the job, it's going to be someone who's going to make your job as an engineer or program manager easier. All right, so here are the key takeaways and some of the actions, right? We want to make sure that we are being very smart and being intentional while still focusing on quantity. And those things are hard, right? So you really do want to leverage AI in your job search. There are so many tools. Again, I have a whole list. I can send them over to Danielle. Of things that you can use to tailor your resume, create cover letters, those presentations that I was talking about, finding hiring managers, finding their emails, finding them on LinkedIn. Like there's just all these tools that you can use. I use so many. AI is definitely paying some bills based on how many subscriptions I have every month. So you want to use the tools that make sense for you. You don't need to use all the tools, but you do need to use some. Make sure you're showcasing and proving your experience. A lot of people don't like that word proving. I don't need to prove anything to you. In the hiring process, you do, right? So you want to be able to quantify your impact, right? Make sure based on their first impression that they know you are good at your job. There's no question about it. You're good at your job. The only question that they should have is whether they are going to like you or not, right? And that is something that you can answer in the interview. And because you're going to be so likable in the interview, they're not going to question that at all. You want to use your network, use and grow your network. Networking, when you're reaching out to 5 people per company, maybe that company is going to work out. But now you have 5 extra people every week that you're adding after 10 weeks. That's 50 people in your network that know that you're good at your job because you've said that. And maybe you're not going to get that job right now, but maybe 6 months from now, maybe a year from now, you have that person in your network. You've talked about how good you are at your current job. And they're like, man, now we have this position open. We should talk to this person's we already know they're good at their job. We have their resume on file. I've been seeing what she's been posting on LinkedIn. Let's have a chat with her. Why not? Um, and just remember that even though the job market may feel absolutely impossible, there are people who are getting jobs every single day, and there's no reason why that should not be you. There are things that you can do literally today that are going to totally change your job search, and so you should do them, whether it's today or tomorrow. It doesn't mean go immediately after this call and update your resume, but it does mean that you should have a lot more clarity of the things that you are going to um, focus on when it comes to your job search. And that is it. That's all I have.
Maddie, thank you so much. What an amazing presentation. I
Yeah.
do have some questions that were submitted prior to the call and also during the call. So I'll just go ahead and ask you that. And I know you have touched on some of this, so anything else you want to add, go ahead and do so. So the first one is, if you could give one piece of advice to a company implementing a new ATS system, what would you tell them?
I loved that question so much. And it's actually not even something that they need to implement a new ATS system for. It's something that they could do right now with every ATS. And it is one, if one, if I connect my LinkedIn, I shouldn't have to update my resume. That's the first one. Second is ask the questions so that way I don't even have to look at your resume, right? So if you are looking for someone with 5 years of experience, ask me if I have 5 years of experience. If you're looking for, I am only interested in people who have this, 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 this. Do you have that experience? Yes or no? Yes. Okay, perfect. Then no, I'm not gonna look at your resume. Yes, then I'm gonna look at your resume. I'm gonna look at your resume. It's very simple. Just ask the qualifying questions in the beginning part of the process as opposed to the end. The other thing that I would recommend for an ATS system, this is something that some ATSs are doing, but some ATSs have done this before in the past and it has created a lot of biases, so they've been sued. But is to create a ranking system. A lot of people assume that ATSs have that already. Most of them do not. But if I am looking for someone who has 5 years experience from this type of company, from these keywords, you should have a percentage, right? Like you should be able to compare the resume to the job description, tell me who has the best match, and just I can reach out to those people first. Those are the people who are going to be most relevant. Those are the people who I want to reach out to. Those are the things that I would say as a recruiter would make my job a lot easier, and as a candidate would make your job a lot easier. I think there's sometimes like I'll see job descriptions and it'll say in the job description or in these qualifying questions, if you don't have this experience, you're not going to hear back from us. I think that's beautiful. A lot of people think it's really rude. I think it's beautiful, right? Once I apply and you already know, like, I don't have this, this, and this, don't make me wait for an email. Just tell me right there. Tell me right there, hey, we're only looking for the people with this experience. You answered no, so this isn't a good fit for you. Maybe a great thing, like maybe an extra step would be redirect that person to a position that they're actually qualified for. Hey, you're not qualified for this position. This other position does seem like a good fit for you. ATSs can do that. They just don't. So what up? Those are things I would recommend.
I think a ranking system would be such an excellent tool to use.
I agree.
The next question is how do you get around ATS? And also, what do you do with everything becoming AI?
I think that's a question that one, I already answered the getting around the ATS, right? You can't, right? The best way is to network. It is genuinely that strategy because most people are going to apply, not most people are going to reach out to those hiring managers on LinkedIn. And a lot of people are like, oh, so many people are doing that. No, they're not. They're not. They're really not. And you doing that extra step, if you're not qualified, it's not going to make them more interested in you, right? You only are doing this for positions that you're qualified for. And it is genuinely because recruiters are so overwhelmed. Like when I was a recruiter, specifically when I was recruiting at Microsoft, I would have literally hundreds every day. I would go on LinkedIn and have hundreds of um, LinkedIn requests. And I couldn't get through those LinkedIn requests, right? I have hundreds of people who are reaching out to me for positions that I'm not interviewing for. That was such a waste of time for all of us, especially me. But when I would have somebody who would reach out to me on LinkedIn who was a good fit and they'd say, "Hey, you hired my friend XYZ. They told me to reach out to you on LinkedIn." There is this like level of relief I would feel because I'd be like, "Oh my God, thank they did my job for me. I don't even have to go out and look for this person. It would feel like I was cheating. Like I found a cheat code because I was being able to hire people because they were reaching out to me on LinkedIn versus me having to go find them. I felt like, I don't know, I was doing something wrong because I really wasn't working that hard, but I was filling more positions. You're doing them a favor. And so when you're reaching out to a hiring manager and you're showing them that you're good at your job, they're not going to feel annoyed. They're going to be like, wow, this person actually is really good. Why hasn't the recruiter scheduled this interview yet? Let's get them interviewed. This person could fill this position that I'm looking for. They're doing me a favor. So the best way to get around the ATS or beat the ATS isn't by not being in the ATS. You're going to have to be in the ATS. It is by networking. It is by reaching out. It is by pitching yourself and showing that you can solve this pain point. And the second question about AI, no one knows. No one knows. I'm on LinkedIn all day, every day. And I hear and I talk to recruiters who are actively recruiting right now. And I hear the complaints, and they are struggling. They are struggling so much because they have no idea how to combat this AI problem. And the AI problem isn't the resumes. It is the resumes all look the same, right? Because we've been told to do that. You have to. Like, again, you can't stand out. But secondly, there's a bunch of AI systems, tools, and services that will apply to jobs as soon as they're posted. Now, sounds beautiful. The problem is these systems suck, right? And so they'll apply to jobs that you absolutely don't qualify for, in cities that you don't live in, for positions that are too high or too low, or pay too much or pay too little. And they don't care. They have like literally, they have 5 questions that they ask you when you're onboarding, and then they'll apply, they'll spray and pray, they'll spray, and then you got to pray for a response. And so recruiters will post a position on Monday. Come Tuesday, they have 1,000 people. 999 of them not qualified. So, but they don't know that. They have to go through them, and it's very frustrating. I think that the answer to that and the best way is to fix the system, fix the way that we are hiring. One of the things that Danielle touched on earlier is I am creating a company that is my goal is to eliminate resumes overall. That's why I hate talking about them because I think they're inefficient. And I think it's the worst. It's something that we've been using for literally hundreds of years. No one, if you ask one single person, why are we using resumes? Like, why are we doing that? No one tell you, right? Like, if you apply to a college, they would look at your transcripts. If you apply to a master's degree, they're looking at your transcripts. Why, when we're applying for jobs, we're just doing it based on this fancy document that I created in ChatGPT? Like, why is that the way that I'm going to get a job? It's very outdated. And so skill script is going to be pretty much like your transcript, your proof that you are good at your job. And so you'll be able to apply with this profile, right? As opposed to, or a portfolio mostly, as opposed to an outdated resume. Something that is going to showcase you in the best light with the things that are most important, your skills and your experience, not how fancy you can make your resume, not that it's in Times New Roman 12, not that is in the format that recruiters mostly like to see, and everything's biased, so I don't know what recruiters want to see. It is based on the things that actually matter and not any of the things that don't. And I think that's the only way. I think that's the only way that we are going to combat AI is by making the skills that are really important clear on your side and making the skills that are extremely important for the hiring managers clear on the job description side. And they need to look the same. And that's my theory.
Absolutely amazing. I love that. You touched on this a lot throughout the presentation, so I just wanted to see if you had anything else to add. How do you advise your clients to prepare for interviews?
Okay, so I could talk about interviews. I would do another session just talking about interviews because I there's so much I have to say about interviews. But the way that I always recommend is to have 5 stories, not 5 interview questions that you prepare. 5 stories. And these stories are going to be examples of things that are really important. So when you're looking at a job description, those first 3 bullet points of what you're going to be doing day to day or, your responsibilities, those are the ones that are most important. Those are the ones that you're going to be doing the most of your time or what you're going to be doing that's the most impactful. So your stories should be very similar to those 3 bullet points. And your stories need to have challenges. They can't just be like this perfect situation from start to finish and it just happened perfectly, right? That's not really showing me that you're good at your job. I need to see your problem solving skills. So I always tell people have 5 stories. And these 5 stories you can use for a multitude of questions. You can use it to showcase collaboration, time management, problem solving, client interactions. And so if you have these 5 stories as opposed to trying to prepare for 10 interview questions, 20 interview questions. There's no way to predict what you're going to be asked on an interview. But I can promise every time I have an interview preparation session with my clients and then they have their interview, they come back and they're like, they ask very similar questions. So we went over, I was able to use every single one, every single example that we talked about. And you get really good at telling those 5 stories. You sound really confident when you're telling those 5 stories. You practice, right? You practice in front of a mirror, you practice in front of your camera, you practice with AI tools or AI tools for this. And you practice and you get better at telling these stories and you tell them like they're stories. You start working on your storytelling and you're able to answer most interviews with those 5 to 6 stories. And that's what you should be doing. It's not going and like going on what's it Glassdoor and looking at the interview questions that this company has asked before. It is because every company does have a list of questions, but every hiring manager is different. So you really can't predict what they're going to ask. As opposed to doing that, wasting your time, just be really good at telling those 5 stories. And so now you don't have to prepare for this interviewer at this company and another interview at that company. All you're doing is practicing the 5 to 6 stories, and you sound so confident when you're saying them and you've practiced them and you sound confident. You sound like you know what you're talking about. Hiring managers are going to like that as opposed to you having to like dig in the trenches of your brain and think about an example when you had to solve this type of problem. You already know because it's already laid out for you. When you are answering these questions or you have these stories, I always tell people, especially if it's a virtual interview, I have my little iPad right here. You have your iPad, you have Post-its, whatever's good for you, and you have your stories. And you don't have the full stories, you have bullet points. This is the problem, this is how I responded to the problem, and this is the outcome, right? These are I call it the pro method. You just have those 3 bullet points, so that way, it's there. You already practiced them, but it's there, so you know if it's a time management problem, I'm gonna go for this example. If it's a customer service problem, I'm gonna go for this example because I've already listed those competencies. And once you hit all 3 of those points, you've answered the question that the interview answer is done. And so you have those 3 things that are really important in those 5 stories in bullet points, so you can look at it really quickly and know what story you're going to tell, as opposed to trying to like memorize and practice 10 to 15 interview questions. And that's how you're gonna get past those interviews.
Thank you for that. The next question is, what can a candidate do to set them apart from the competition in interviews? So we did touch on that. And the last thing, anything else you would like to add?
Yeah, I mean, I think that just to go back to what you can set yourself apart is this is going to be a little stalkery. But what I like to recommend, and this is what sometimes I'll do for my clients, is I'll go on the hiring manager's LinkedIn. And like I said, I look through their posts, I see what they're talking about, I see what their interests are, right? What groups are they a part of, right? I do all this research and I'm like, okay, so when you get to the interview and you're asking questions and you're like getting to know them, you'll say something like, oh, I noticed on your LinkedIn that posted about XYZ tool that y'all are going to be implementing. Have you implemented it? How is it going? How is the implementation process? They're gonna be like, oh wow, they did their research, right? You want to see that they've done their research. Like they've really thought about this. It's not just something that they did willy-nilly. Like they really actually thought about this. And so doing that with your interviewers, right? When a lot of recruiters will send you the people that you're interviewing with ahead of time. Well, I used to do this when I was a recruiter. I don't think everybody does this, but I would also send their LinkedIn profiles because I want you to go on it. I want you to go on it. I want you to see their experience, right? You're probably interviewing with somebody who you went to the same school as, you worked at the same company. You're able to take information like, oh, I saw that you came from this larger company to this company. How's that change been for you? Because I also come from a larger company to come to this, like now they're like, okay, this person's done their research. And now I can talk like a normal human being as opposed to just I'm interrogating this person. So definitely something that you can do to stand out for interviews. And the last thing that or one of the things I want to share, because I know there was a couple other questions in the chat, is that there's only so much that you can control. At the end of the day, no matter how many times that you do your resume and you network and you tailor your resume and you create a cover letter and you do these presentations, the job market is what the job market is, right? And there's nothing that we can do about that, unfortunately, not right now. I mean, I'm trying to change it. I try to talk about it enough, but you cannot take it personally. You can't take this job market and this job search personally. There are all things that you can do to optimize, and there are things that you can do to strategize. but it's not your fault. You could literally be doing everything right and still not get a job. It doesn't mean that you should quit, right? But it does mean that you cannot take it personally. You cannot say, I've applied to 150 jobs. I've interviewed with 10 different companies and I haven't gotten a job. I suck at what I do. I suck at the job search. I suck at my job. Like, I'm obviously not good at it. I'm not hireable. I'm not likable. Those things are not true. You cannot let those things affect your confidence because when you do, the next interview you go to, they're going to feel that. They're going to feel like, oh, this person isn't really confident, right? And it's hard. It's really hard when you get all these rejections. And I can say it because I'm not the one getting rejected like this, but it's hard to get all those rejections and not take it personally. But you can't because at the end of the day, this is not personal. It is just business. And if they can get someone who has more experience and who has, better pedigree and can start faster and is local and it's cheaper to do the job versus you, they're going to choose that person, right? And that's not a reflection of you. It's a reflection of their poor problem solving, right? It's their poor decision making. And so you just can't take it personal because every hiring manager is looking for something different. Every recruiter is going to do things differently. This is a human driven process. And no matter how much AI and technology you use, at the end of the day, people want to hire people that they like. And sometimes they hire people who they already know. And those are not the things that we can control. And sometimes they don't want to hire people at all. And they just got ghost jobs. So just don't take it personal.
Great advice. I think that advice has come up on every single one of our coffee chats so far. We are a minute out, and I don't think we're going to get through all the questions. Would it be okay if I send you these questions and then you just reply to them?
Absolutely.
Great. So, does the use of ATS make it harder for someone to pivot industries or roles since they do not have the exact experience but have related experience?
Yeah, it does. I mean, I hate to say this, and I'm not sure how other people have answered this question, but if you are looking to pivot right now, it is going to be extremely challenging. So, what I always tell people is to focus on your tween position. You have your dream position, right? The program manager, you want to be a program manager. They're going to hire program managers who have experience, who have a PMP, who've worked at the largest companies because they have the luxury to do so. They have the amount of candidates to do so. So don't apply to those positions. Focus on your tween position. What is the position that's going to make you more desirable for that position, right? Is it a project coordinator, a program coordinator, whatever it is, that position in between from where you're at now to where you want to be. That is what you want to focus on when you're looking to pivot. A lot of people will go and apply to jobs that just genuinely don't qualify for. You have transferable skills, but you don't qualify for them. So focus on the positions that are going to actually hire you and appreciate your transferable skills, maybe one step down for what you're looking for, but that's going to make you better qualified when you apply next year. Focusing on your training position. And that is how you're going to pivot. It needs to be a little bit more strategic. It can't just be, I'm going to apply to these positions right now and hope and pray that I'm going to get it. You really do need to focus on the position that's going to get you closer to the position you want to be in.
Wonderful advice. So right now we are at time and we want to respect everyone's time. So first, I want to say thank you so much, Maddie. Amazing.
Thank you.
Always amazing. I will send over the questions that were not answered to you, and then the slides will be posted sometime today, with the recording going up next week. If you have any other questions, please feel free to reach out to Jade or I. We are always happy to ask questions. And again, thank you so much, Maddie, and thank you everyone for your time today.
You're welcome. And I'll send you over those templates and tools, the resources that I said I would as
Thank
well.
you. That's greatly appreciated.
You're
Thank you,
welcome. Bye,
everyone. See
ladies.
you.
Good luck.
We'll see you in September.